everybody, and welcome into another episode of It's Not Only Football, Friday Night Lights, and Beyond. Today is not a recap episode. Today is a very special episode where we have an incredible guest who is really the impetus for the entirety of Friday Night Lights.
It would not be here without him.
And I'm talking the book, the original book, written by the man sitting across from us today, Buzz Bissinger. We could not be more lucky to have him here today. Buzz, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you for that introduction, because most people say, there was a book?
Yeah.
But there was a book. I started it. I started the franchise. I started the franchise.
And they might not only know you from Friday Night Lights, the book. Right. I mean, A Prayer for the City, or right. 3 Nights in August, Father's Day, which actually is very impactful to me. It's an incredible book, and I urge everyone to go out and read all of these pieces. Good. You're a fantastic author. And
thank you.
And it's really interesting to me, and I want to get into it later, how the way you describe West Texas is so beautiful and so loquacious. I mean, it's on par with how Cormac McCarthy talks about West Texas, which is,
that's really kind.
Setting
so I'll take it. I'll take it.
But it is.
I mean, I just reread the book, and I remember it being a great book, and now 20 years later, you're an amazing writer. It's hard to realize this isn't a novel, that it's all true.
No, it's all true. I mean, everything in it is factual. There may be dispute. Everything in it's true, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And people in Odessa have tried to debunk it for years, and they could not.
Well, I think a lot of people who watch the TV show laud it for its honesty or its ability to make you feel as though you're a part of this small town. But the honesty at the core of the book, and we assume here that everybody's watched the show, but we're not going to assume today that everybody has read the book. And,
right.
and again,
that's a good assumption.
I'm going to urge everybody to go read it.
Read a book.
They may have seen the movie as well, which was actually directed by your cousin Pete Berg.
Yes.
And second cousin?
Second cousin.
Second cousin.
Right.
But before all of that happened, I want to know, and I know Zach does as well, how did you get your start in journalism, and then why did that road lead you to Odessa?
At the age, I don't remember the age, it may have been 9, 10, or 11. I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side, and I would get off the bus, and there was this newsstand when I got off, and it must have had 6 or 7 newspapers. It was the heyday of New York newspapers. And I remember looking at them, and I was enthralled that every 24 hours they were coming out with something new. It just boggled my mind, and it sort of clicked, and I said, I want to be part of this. And so I was lucky in that my life was very informed at an early age. Worked for newspapers in Norfolk, and then ultimately St. Paul, Minnesota, and then ultimately went to the Philadelphia Inquirer. Was there for about 7 years. I was lucky enough to get a Nieman Fellowship at Harvard. It was a very heady year. You could take any course you wanted at the university. And after that year, I said, I got to challenge myself. I want to do something different. So I took a trip out west before I had to go back to work with a friend, and then it hit me. You went through all these little towns. We took the southern route, and downtown was kind of falling apart even then because of the Walmart effect, the mall effect. But you would drive a few blocks out of town and see these gorgeous football stadiums, solid, built in the 1930s, and then the spindle of the lights. And I said, these are not football stadiums. These are shrines. These are temples. And then I found Odessa pretty easily, actually.
That's so different from me. I grew up outside Chicago in Evanston.
Where'd you grow up?
In Evanston.
Sure.
And after we did the show, you were like, you don't understand high school football and I'm like, I don't. We didn't have Friday night nights. We had Saturday morning games that no one went to.
I'm very familiar with Evanston. There's no way you're going to get 20,000 game or 4,000 in Florida. That's not going to happen.
But I did get
you guys are way too. Evanston's way too smart for that stuff.
Well, they actually put up lights. I think our second season of the show, and had me come do the ceremonial coin flip. Yeah.
Oh my God.
To turn on the lights at the football
it wasn't
stadium?
actually. I just did the coin flip. But it was
so cool. So at Evanston, they always played football during the day. That was like the thing.
God.
Really?
God.
I mean,
you were deprived as a child. That's all I can say.
I'm from Omaha, Nebraska originally. I'm from a state where the third largest city every Saturday is Memorial Stadium.
Right.
But that's for a university. That is for the University of Nebraska. Right. Now, much of Nebraska is, they play 7-on-7. They can't even field 11-man football teams. Okay. And yeah, my uncle, I've actually talked about my Uncle Bub on the show. He's the school superintendent of a county as well as the football coach.
Is he?
And everybody buses into the school and stays there for the week before going back out to the farms and everything like that, and they field a 7-on-7 team. But once I moved to Florida, I got to taste a little bit of what high level.
Yeah. Well, you told me you had 4,000 a game. I mean, that's hefty.
Yeah, we would.
And Florida's football mad.
But that wasn't every week. It was for maybe the biggest rivalries.
Right.
And our school didn't have a lot of winning records. They didn't have the pedigree of Odessa Permian High School
at that time,
where at that time they had 20 or 25 consecutive winning seasons before you embedded.
7-2 was a losing season for Permian. Yeah. One of the reasons all roads led to Permian pretty quickly. I didn't do a lot of heavy research. I spoke to college recruiters, and there was a guy from UCLA who basically said, "You know what? Just go to Odessa." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Just go. Here's what you do. You fly in, you go right to the football stadium, and then you tell me if this is the right place to tell this story." And that's exactly what I did, and then I got permission. The stadium was, now it's kind of average because there's been a stadium war in Texas. But it was incredible. Seated 19,000, beautiful lights, 2-story press box. I said, "This is high school?" And this was built for $6 million in the 1980s. It was the only bond issue ever approved in Odessa, because they were very conservative and they didn't want to do anything that involved government. And I saw it, and then I met with the coach and the athletic director, and they said, "Yeah, you can come," and I was in. So it was like 3 phone calls.
So the audience knows, you then uprooted your life.
Yes.
And moved to Odessa for a year.
For a year with my kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And, this wasn't just you flying in every now and then.
No, it won't work. It won't work.
Of course.
There's only one way to do it. I've read books where you parachute in every weekend, and they don't work because I had to get the feel and the atmosphere of the town. And the only way to do that is you become part of it.
Right.
Kids went to school. I did grocery shopping there. I met a lot of people. I met a lot of good people. And it was important to the players. They would have practices at 7 in the morning. Why don't you have fucking at 7 in the morning? I mean, that's crazy. But I had to go because they would watch. Is he there? Is he there? Right. Is he there? And when he said, "All right, this guy's committed," that's how I got inside and really I love them and stay in touch with 2 of them.
I want to ask something real quick because it just clicked. Because I just re-listened to the book. I did read it many years ago, but with 2 kids, I don't have a lot of time to read a whole book. But you had such an intimate relationship with so many of the players and even the coach's wife. But I feel like it didn't seem as you were as close to the coach as everyone else. Did he not give you as much access, or am I just kind of interpreting?
I mean, the problem with the coach was, to be honest, and he tragically died several months ago. Oh. He had early Alzheimer's and then died, and he didn't like me. I understand that. I tried to break bread with him and saw him when I was doing, I think, the 25th anniversary, and he was very nice, but then he would trash me. It wasn't that interesting. I mean, I don't know. He was a nice man, but he didn't have a lot of oomph to him. And so, you're looking for characters. You're looking for people you can really dive deep. You're looking for people who are going to, sustain a 400-page book, who are interesting and have stories to tell. I spent a lot of time with him, but, he just wasn't. I felt he was a good man. I felt he was a good coach. He never abused his players. I remember he yelled once. He was very, very conservative, and I think that drove some of the players nuts. He would call the same play, same play, same play. When you're playing a lousy team, it doesn't matter. But they played Dallas Carter. They lost in semifinals.
I remember you said in the book it was the play they'd done 8 billion times.
And it drove the players nuts. You got to go for it against Dallas Carter sent 14 kids to D1. To Division I schools. You could argue it was the most talented team ever in the history of Texas. And Permian held tough, but you can't run the same play every time. You got to go for it, and you got to be innovative. And he wasn't like that.
So before you sold the idea of this book to a publisher, had you met the players? Had you met Boobie Miles or Mike Winchell or Ivy Christian?
I knew, I knew of the players. I had a sense. First of all, you want to pick a school that maybe can go all the way. And Permian's lineage was incredible. They'd won 5 state championships. At that time, they were the winningest team in Texas state history, and there was a great legend to them. Mm-hmm. This school in the middle of nowhere in West Texas, a place is bad when other Texans make fun of it. And they would make, rabid fun of Odessa. So I knew a little bit. Obviously, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew they had been picked preseason number 1, so I wanted that. In terms of characters, I really didn't know until I got there in August of 1988.
Wow. It's interesting. So people who watch the show, a couple of our characters you could maybe draw parallels to the actual players on that 1988 team.
Yes.
Boobie Miles with all of the flash that he has. You can see that in Smash Williams, who is one of the characters on the show. You can see Saracen in the parallels.
Yeah, you were very,
Mike Winchell,
it certainly reminded me of Winchell. And I know you took it your own way, but when I saw it, that guy has really captured the softness and the decency and also the insecurity and his utter devotion to his mother. So I thought you really did a great job.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Riggins, you can see a lot in Billingsley. Who is a fraction of the book, much larger in the film, and then Riggins becomes the breakout character of the show. Right. So it's very like Paul Bunyan, how some of these characters have been photocopies of each other, and then like these huge mythical blowouts on the fictional side on the television show. But to go back to a very real moment, Boobie Miles, for those who are listening and don't know, was kind of adorned as the king of this, Permian Panthers football team. Right. There's this watermelon. What is it, the watermelon feed?
It's a watermelon feed where the team is introduced. There are 500 people there. They're all wearing Permian black and white, and they're little kids with black and white pom-poms. It was weird, actually. And they're selling Permian purses. But as a writer, you pinch yourself. I can't fucking believe this is happening. This is it's like the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I remember they would introduce the players, and Boobie came down the middle of the aisle, and everyone went nuts. He was the linchpin.
Right.
And I can tell you this, his story is very, very tragic. He was a man among boys. Now, I never saw him play, and I can explain what happened, but I saw clips. 6 feet, 6'2", 205, fast, mean, tough. You never want to say anyone's targeted to be great in college or the pros because it's too much of a crapshoot. But he was great, and as I say, what happened to him it's one of the most tragic things I've ever seen, and he never recovered, and his life is a wreck.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because a lot of times we talk about how the TV show, you see all these adults putting all of their broken dreams, all of their hopes and desires, unfulfilled destiny, all of these things onto these kids.
Right.
And a lot of people who watch the show, they don't believe that all of this is real. But this truly and honestly happens. They're a cog in the machine for these adults who want their team. They want to beat their chest and say, our high school football team is the greatest team ever. And it's a 55-year-old booster who.
Well, that's why we didn't have lights in my high school.
I mean, that's the way. That's exactly the way it was. I mean, the great film director Alan Pakula, who worked on a script for a while and worked on developing it, was actually quite interested, but decided I don't want to spend a year in Texas, much less a day. But he said that really the subtext of the book was fathers and sons. Fathers living vicariously through their kids. Certainly that was true in Don Billingsley and his father Charlie. Don moved in with his father only to play football. Charlie had been a big star in high school, and they stayed together. And then right after the season, they split apart, and it put a lot of pressure, I think, on Don. Boobie was black. Very difficult in the town of Odessa, where there was a lot of racism. And I paused because it's just so awful to remember. There was a preseason scrimmage again at Texas Tech, Jones Stadium. He got the ball. He probably was only going to play a set of downs. I mean, what's the point? He got the ball. He was running down the field. He gained about 15 yards, and then he cut to the sideline. Someone was angling at him. And he got hit on his knee. It wasn't a hard hit, but he turned, and he ended up tearing his his ACL.
Which back then in 1988 was a career-ending injury. It's not like today.
That was it. Yeah, and you could see the fear, the anger, the disappointment, everything was going down the drain.
Derek Luke performed as Boobie Miles in the film, and a very famous scene in the car with his uncle, where he basically says, I don't have anything else.
And he did.
This world hasn't given me anything else.
And that's true.
I haven't been taught anything. I haven't been shown anything.
I also remember
nothing.
It's such a heartbreak.
He was a football animal. I hate to say it. That is how they treated him. They felt this kid's only good for football. He does not need education. We'll give him answers to the exams. All we care about is making sure he's eligible for football. Once the season's over, he can flunk out all he wants.
He deserves so much more than that.
Well, he deserved an education.
Yeah.
Oh, 100.
And he's Jekyll and Hyde. He can be great. He can be funny. He can be warm. But he's got this streak that, I'll tell you, he's been in and out of prison, but I think he's going down now for about 30 to 40 years. Something terrible happened. He's going to go back to prison. He has not been able to make it on the outside, and I've tried to help him a lot, but he just can't. Now, is it because of Friday Night Lights? Is he because he feels cheated? And it's weird. He's sort of a star in some ways, but he got nothing out of it.
Right.
I mean, Miles Sanders, who played for the Eagles, would wear his jersey. There were rap songs about him. A lot of pro players are fascinated by him. He didn't get anything out of it. Nothing. But he walks in the mall and everyone, there's Boobie Miles. There's Boobie Miles.
God,
I think that really picked up his head, to be honest.
Yeah. I never even thought about that. And even what's even more heartbreaking about his story is, in the movie they dramatize it and they push his injury further into the season. Right. And, going back on the book and realizing he didn't even get to play that season. And
they put him back in one game. Of course, he had a torn ACL. And why they put him back, I don't know. And why it wasn't diagnosed, I don't know. He couldn't play. And he really didn't have the speed. And he was tentative. I think it was against Abilene Cooper. Yeah. And you could tell then it was never, ever going to be the same, and then he quit. He left the team.
Well, for you in that moment, and I don't mean to in any way, shape, or form take away from Boobie and his journey and everything that happened after, but for you in that moment, writing this book and your star player of this team, like what was that like for you? Because
at the beginning, I called my editor in a panic and says I might as well come home and pay back the advance because the season's over. And, the star of the team is not playing. And she said, I think that's great because that's going to put more pressure, more drama. How are they going to recover from it? That's a really interesting story. Stories are good when there's conflict, when there's drama, when there's unpredictability. And she was right. What happened was a kid out of nowhere, his name was Chris Comer, came in and it was virtually every bit as good. And that was in the first game. And when that happened, Boobie disappeared. That was it. And so the story of Boobie became more intricate and fundamentally much, much more tragic. He still got these recruiting letters. They made no sense. No difference at that point. Right. Oklahoma, Texas, I don't know if he could have played. There would have been eligibility problems. But you could just
think Nebraska recruited him where I'm from.
They did.
Nebraska.
They did.
I mean, they were running back you. That's what they wanted.
Whether or not he could make it, we'll never know. I mean, you make a good point. They're whispered in the ear. You're going to play in college. You're going to go to the pro. It's a bad whisper. It's a really, really bad dream. It's going to be so hard to do.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Here on Friday Night Lights and beyond, we talk about a lot of things that are scary for actors like us, like whether or not a role is going to define you for the rest of your life, or if you've done everything that you should have done when you were working on a show. And I got to tell you, BetterHelp can help push through a lot of those issues for both Zach and I.
100%. Sometimes I'm stressing about, am I ever going to get another job? I mean, I've gone through dry spells. They suck. But in those dry spells or other stressful times in life, I talk to a therapist. I talk things out, and they let me know everything's going to be okay. I don't need to go through these things alone. And through BetterHelp, I've found licensed therapists to help me through these times.
Yeah, because when you go to therapy, you have a breakthrough, you feel empowered, and you're more prepared to take on everything that life throws at you, whether it's an audition or it's something out there that you're dealing with today. Look, BetterHelp is convenient, and it's flexible, and it's affordable, and it's entirely online. Look, if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option for you.
You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and if that one doesn't seem like the right fit for you, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. So, if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/FNL today to get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FNL. There's one thing all great teams, coaches, players, even podcasters like us have in common, and that is preparation. Planning is key in everyday life, too, and a great way to be prepared for the unexpected is to join Air Medcare Network, America's largest air ambulance membership network. Air Medcare Network providers operate state-of-the-art helicopters capable of responding to critically ill or injured patients in need of emergency medical transport. But when you're an AMCN member, you won't see a bill for your flight only when flown by one of their providers. That's right, you pay nothing. So join Air Medcare Network's more than 3 million members. It's just $99 a year. And right now, our listeners get up to an $80 MasterCard or Amazon e-gift card when they join and use offer code FNL. So make sure the Air Medcare Network team is protecting your family and your finances now. Visit airmedcarenetwork.com/FNL today. That's airmedcarenetwork.com/FNL. Pete Berg, how did he come into play? Like, how did that movie even get made, I guess, at that point. No?
Pete's trajectory is one of the most fascinating. I've thought about it a lot. I can't figure it out. Do you know the story is Pete was working for a company. He didn't really like it, so he quit. He was in Los Angeles, and he kept saying to people, I can always act. And his parents would say, "What are you talking about? What do you mean always act? What acting have you done?" It was I was in the college production of Pirates of Penzance or something.
Right.
And he did it. He got an agent. He was in Chicago Hope. But I remember when the book came out, he called me out of the blue, and he said, "This book is incredible. I'm going to make a film out of it." Now, he'd done nothing in terms of directing.
When the book came out, you got this call.
And I said to myself, that's the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. He's not going to do it. And I know Pete. Pete can bullshit. Pete's brilliant. God damn it, he did it. He made a movie called Very Bad Things, which is really wonderfully perverse.
Yeah.
And interesting and intense and different. Brian Grazer saw it and loved it and said, "Pete, do you want to do this?" It had nothing to do with me. He said, "Pete, do you want to take a shot at this?" I don't know what year it was, 11, 12. There have been, directors in and out. Richard Linklater, who wanted the team to win, which was pathetic. John Avnet was in it, just churning. And then, more money is piled up against it. There wasn't going to be much foreign, but Grazer said it's going to be, small budget relatively. Can you do it?
Wow.
Said,
so for like that decade after the book released, it was optioned and pitched.
1990, when the book came out, yeah.
Wow. So from 1990 until the movie was made in, 2004?
Yeah.
So like for 14 years, people were trying to take a crack at figuring out how to make this.
I gave up and I got discouraged. And, look, the best thing about Pete directing the movie, and since we were related, he actually did return my phone calls. You know what happens? Look, I'm not naive, and I accept this. They pay you money to shut up. They pay the writer money to shut up. Now go away. We really don't want to hear from you. The one thing I said to Pete was, if you have this team win at the end, you don't understand the book. There's much more drama in losing. They've come this far, and they don't make it. That's poignant. And Pete said, "Don't worry about it." Because I said there were people who felt, no, the audience can't handle it. I hate that phrase. The audience can't handle it. The audience can handle a lot more than these idiots in Hollywood think. Yeah. And they could handle it. And he said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do that."
That's so funny because I said, the first season, spoiler, Friday Night Lights ends with us winning the championship.
Right.
And when I read that, I was like, what? We got to lose. Are you serious? Oh, we won the championship? But it was explained to me, well, next season, then it's a different story because it's how do you defend the championship as opposed to...
And that's good. I mean, I get that.
But this is also, yours is a true story.
No, I mean, it's true. And they came so close. They almost beat Dallas Carter.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Jesse Armstead, who was a great linebacker for the Giants. Great all-pro. And I will never forget.
He's the one that batted the ball down, right?
Oh, God. I mean, out of nowhere. Chavez was open.
Right.
And out of nowhere comes this big hand to swat it down. I mean, he was the best high school player I ever saw. There was a player almost as good, Derek Evans, who ended up going to prison that same year.
Well, the book itself was really, and people might not know this, but the impetus for the television show as well. Because Pete, after doing the movie, and he told us a lot about his journey. He impressed a lot of us young actors with his ability to say, I don't want to do things the way that Hollywood believes they should be done. I don't want the team to win at the end of this story. When he was on Chicago Hope,
catchphrase on set was nobody pushes us around.
Yeah, nobody pushes us around was always Pete's kind of saying.
That's great.
He said he stormed into his boss's office on Chicago Hope and said, kill my character, please, because I don't want to spend the next 7 years on a network television show because I believe I can do more.
Well, that's Pete.
And so he wanted to do more exploring of the very true and very real situations that were happening in the book that he could not explore in a 2-hour film.
Right.
Whether it was race, whether it was the politics of a small town, a lot further and deeper dive into
relationships. It really became a TV. I didn't watch it that much. I have great respect for Jason Katims, the so-called showrunner. I think he's brilliant. But it seemed to me in what I watched, it evolved into much more about relationships and less about a football team winning a state championship. I mean, a lot of people said the portrayal of Kyle Chandler and Connie Britton was one of the best they've ever seen in terms of a couple trying to work things out, and I thought it was the right move. Look, I met with the writers early. They asked me to come to L.A., and I did. And my concern was you're going to make this into something silly.
Right.
Something goofy, Fast Time at Ridgemont High or something like that. And they said, no, we want to do something serious. And it was clear to me that wasn't bullshit. Book is different from a film, is different from a television show. They all have different needs. And, I wanted to honor that. But I could tell they were going to go in the right direction. And I think as the show evolved, they went more and more, frankly, in the right direction. I know that the football scenes became less and less. They're expensive. And I don't know how well football plays on television. It plays well in a film, but it's a smaller screen. I didn't watch I was sort of Friday night lighted out, and there was NBC fought me, and this bothers me to this day. They fought me on getting credit for a year. Well, it's called Friday Night Lights.
Right.
The promotional material says based on the book by Buzz Bissinger, H.G. Bissinger. They were worried about suits. They were worried that, Winchell's going to sue and saying, that's me, you owe me money. It was a bunch of crap. It was, a bunch of crap, but it really hurt. Here I am. I've written the book. The film's based on the book. The TV show is certainly inspired by the book. Yeah. And I'm not getting credit. I'm not getting any credit. Well, that stung.
I have a copy of the book, and for those that are watching on YouTube, for some reason – I'm on the cover of this damn thing. This should never be.
Never.
It is an iconic photo.
I'm on it too.
Who is your? You're on it as well.
Are you on it too?
He is. Yeah, he's in the back with his arms
looking all
crossed,
little
like
in the
he always is.
Oh yeah, you're the tiny one. There we go.
But the cool thing about this is you signed this actually to me August 24th of 2006. So you were there, and I want you to know that I can't speak for everyone, but as someone who played high school football in Florida, who made it to the state quarterfinals and state semifinals, only to fall 6 points short of the state championship in Florida at a school where we had losing season after losing season and no one expected anything of us.
That's a big deal.
I cried on the field with my brothers.
Good.
I saw the film in the theater 6 times with my brothers from that football team. I've read this book multiple times.
Right.
The impact of the truth and the honesty in this book, which I should never be on the cover of and Zach shouldn't be either, is felt and was felt every day when we were shooting the show. I really believe that.
Well, when I went down, although Pete promised me to put me in a scene and he cut me. And
wait. Do you remember what the scene was about? Like what?
I thought it was the first episode. Anyway, he said, I'll get you in a crowd scene. You got to look upset. You know how Pete is. He gives very oblique instructions. On the sidelines, I don't know how to look upset. I'm not an actor, and he cut me.
The people that I work with on this show, Zach and May, they call me a hoarder. They say I hold on to too much.
No, you keep that.
But I end up with really cool stuff like this. I have my Playbook, Jason Street's Playbook, which was really cool.
Well, I hope you have the hardcover.
I do. I do have.
Because that was a TV tie-in, and it's really cheesy.
Yeah.
And Friday Night Lights was not cheesy, and this looks like
no. And that photograph is
they
iconic.
Exactly, and they thought somehow this is going to spur sales of the book, and it did not. The movie spurred a lot of sales.
Right.
This did not, and the TV show obviously morphed into something I think different. I could see the similarities at the beginning. I could tell you were Winchell. I could tell Smash was playing Boobie in a sense, but all the characters went in other dimensions.
It's interesting though because Street had a little Boobie in him with Street's injury happening so early. Now, Street was the impetus for Street. We've talked about on our podcast was a young man named David Edwards who sustained an injury just like Street. But when I auditioned for the role of Street, I had to use the Derek Luke scene where he's telling his uncle he's lost his career and he has nothing. And so there's elements that are pulled in and of your time. And so,
that's based on a real incident. I remember Pete was doing research. Mm-hmm. I think it was for the film. And he said it was surreal. I mean, the kids on the field, clearly it's really, really serious. They finally get him off the field, 10 or 15 minutes, and they continue the game. They continue the game. Now, they wouldn't do that today.
Nothing will stop a Texas high school football game. I mean, you say in the book, you saw a referee pass away on the field.
Yeah, my first sort of taste of high school football was an all-star game, and the Permian coaches were the coaches for the game. And this poor ref keels over in the middle of it. He's dead. I mean, he's dead. And I could feel the coaches getting more and more anxious. And I remember one of them saying, all right, come on, get him off the field. Come on, we got to continue. They got him off the field, and they continued. And that's when I said, I'm on to something.
Yeah. It's a lot of people, like I said, it's unbelievable to many people. But I say, please, go get the book, the actual iconic photograph on the outside of it. Who was your photographer?
Rob Clark.
Rob Clark, yeah.
Who was is amazing. I don't know if you've seen you should have him on because he came out with a book of photographs. I think it was called, I forget what it was called, where he published a lot of photographs that never made the book. I should say, look, the book is different. The book delves into issues of race, issues of economy, issues of school. It delves deep into things that, look, Pete said, I'm making a film. I got 2 hours. There is no way I can get into this film everything you wrote about. If I make a film about race, they won't show it. They won't release it. I can't do that. I can refer to it, and there's a scene in which he refers to it. And, I got that. The film was fun. I mean, I think it was done in the Astrodome, and going out there when they're playing the last game, it's all this Permian stuff and these guys in the universe. I can't believe it. It's like I'm back.
Right.
That's crazy.
It's like I'm back. Now, as you know, there's nothing more dull than being on a film set.
Right. Yes.
But it was incredible, and I remember watching. They screened it for me at Sony, and Pete was a few rows back, and he's paying obsessive attention to my body language, and oh God, he's tilting this way. Oh God, what's he doing? And I was blown away. I thought it was great. I thought it was were differences. He captured the heart and soul of the book, which is what I really cared about. Right. And I thought it was he did a great job.
Well, those themes still exist today.
Right.
Race,
yes.
The separation of class, and the politics in a small town, and they are timeless, whether we want them to be or not.
Right.
And we did try to explore that in the show, which, I mean, at this point, the show has been out for damn near 20 years, and things haven't changed.
Yeah, it premiered in 2006.
So
20.
So for anyone out there listening,
17.
Read the book for insight into how the world has changed and how the world still has not changed. But there is one unbelievable moment in the book that I want to jump into, because there are some parallels. All of the work, all of the research, everything that you do is far and away beyond what
it's more than we do.
But there are some parallels that I saw as I'm getting ready to talk to you today that I kind of wanted to dive into. And one of them is luck.
Sure.
But then another true moment of luck in the book,
I know what you're going to say,
and in the film, is a three-way tie happens between schools to earn 2 playoff berths. And one school, Permian, and then 2 of their rivals, is going to be left out, and 2 of them are going to be in the Texas State playoffs. And how do they actually decide this thing? In my high school, it was Lake Howell, which is where I went, Lake Mary, and Lake Brantley, in a 3-way tie to go to the playoffs. But we did a 10-yard line Kansas City tiebreaker where you had 4 downs to score, and we did a round-robin tournament on a Monday night.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I caught the game-winning touchdown.
Wow.
We went for 2. We went to which actually allowed me to quit playing football in college, because I very quickly knew I had this hero moment, and I want to quit. But this isn't about me.
Cool.
This is about this moment.
That's fun. That's cool.
They flip a coin, and if it's 2 coins are heads and 1 is tails, that team is out.
Right.
Were you there?
Oh, yeah.
For this moment?
Permian had to win their last game, which they did easily against San Angelo. And I drove with Mike Winchell was in the car. Gary Gaines, the coach. Mike Winchell was the quarterback of the team, the sort of character you played until you took it on your own. And me. It was kind of a beautiful ride. It was quiet. Gaines and Winchell were talking. I think he said, "Do you believe in curses?" I think he may have said that. They had to go to an undisclosed location, a truck stop, because they were worried too many fans would come and basically riot if they lost. It was Midland Lee, it was Midland High, and it was Permian. And we go in this smoky truck stop. It's kind of dark. And, all right, boys, here it comes. We're going to flip coins. Now, the most nervous person in the room with the most on the line, forget the coaches, was me.
It was you.
That's how your book
that's
ends.
True. If they don't make the playoffs, what kind of book do I have? I mean, I could write a book, but it was so delicious as they make their way up the playoffs. So, I'm sitting there saying, what am I going to do? And they flip it the first time, or they flipped it once, and a coach tried to cheat, basically. He said it was heads, and then the other coach said, that's not heads, that's a tails. And Midland High was out. And I remember driving back with Gaines, and the team went crazy, and I felt incredible relief. That was luck. Think about it.
Yeah.
The turn of a coin. I'm being serious. The turn of a coin. If they had lost, I wouldn't be here. I would not be here. I would not be here.
It's not only football. Friday Night Lights and Beyond is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, y'all, whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance, too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now, that's something you'll want to press play on, like this podcast. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. I'm curious, at this point, were you a fan of the team? I mean, you must have been so emotional.
You know, you're with the team.
Yeah.
You have to distance yourself because there were things I wrote about in terms of the town that upset people. Yeah, I love the team. I love the kids. I had a lot of respect for Gary Gaines. You know, I wanted them to win, not necessarily because it would benefit me, although it would. Once they got to the playoffs and to quarterfinals, semifinals, I said, all right, that's great. I wanted them to beat Dallas Carter. I wanted them to go away. I saw the dedication. I saw the sacrifice. I saw the importance they had taken to me. It took us a month to understand each other because, you know, I'm from New York and have an Eastern accent, and they speak in that West Texas drawl. Do you know what a snipe hunt is?
No.
It's a Texas tradition. Winchell, the quarterback, comes up to me and says, hey, we're going to go snipe hunting. You want to come? I said, all right, I've broken through. I'm going to go snipe hunting. This is so great. And what they do is they take you out into the middle of the desert, and they give you a sack, and then they leave. And you got to get back. They just dump you. There's no such thing as a snipe.
There's no such thing as a snipe.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm from the East. I'm really happy. The guys like me.
Yeah.
And Winchell said, I can't do this to you. This was a snipe hunt. We were going to leave you out in the middle of the desert and didn't really care if you got back or not.
Wow.
But that kind of did help break the ice. And I did. I was a part of the team. You know I'm a journalist and there has to be distance. But, yeah, I went all the way with them. And I wanted them to win.
Well, you talk about in the book, and this – just how insular kind of they are in this portion of Texas. They are cut off 300 miles from any major city anywhere around them. And because of that, they have their own mindset. But because of that, they do whatever they feel like they want to do. You talk about the history of the city. You talk about how it was created, and it was kind of like snake oil salesmen set up this real estate in the middle of nowhere.
Guys from Ohio.
Yeah.
Water. No crops. But nothing there.
But the people that survive there are, you know,
good people.
Hardened.
They're good
hardened
people. They were hardy souls. They had built something out of nothing. And one of the great things about being a journalist is stereotypes break down. You know, you have they're West Texas, they're Hicks, they're this, they're that. They weren't. They were salt of the earth. They had good senses of humor. Mm-hmm. They were certainly proud of their football team. And it just enhanced the important – everyone wants something to brag about. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants something to feel good about, and that football team was it. You know, Odessa might be ugly, which it is. Odessa had was very topsy-turvy.
But I got to tell you, the way you talk about these balmy, beautiful nights, the sunset, the wind through the plains, like you describe it in a way that makes people want to go to this place that now you're saying – it's not really, it's not.
Well, if you go out to the football stadium, it is gorgeous. And I actually think there's something gorgeous about the sort of low desert, as I describe it. It's haunting. Yeah. It's flat. The horizon extends, into the ozone layer, so to speak. And I was taken with that. And on a Friday night, that football stadium, I compared it, was like a rocket ship that had landed on Earth. The lights are beautiful. I think it was an AstroTurf field, and then they're kids. They're kids. We forget. But they're like heroes. They're like pro player, and they run on the field, and they break through the banner. And you begin to tingle. And they didn't always get 19,000. 10,000 was an average crowd, but when they played a rival like Odessa High or Midland Lee, crosstown rival, 19,000. They once got 25,000. They once preempted a baseball playoff game so they could televise the Permian game. Man, it was. They went to away games by charter jet. It was crazy.
They traveled well.
They did travel well.
So much
better than I do today.
As a successor to this book that you wrote, I do want you to know that I know you haven't seen a lot of the show, but so many of the themes and everything that you explore, I am shocked by just how closely we actually tried to use some of those things.
That's good.
That's
good to know.
We've just recapped an episode where the line is uttered, as Dillon High was one of the last to desegregate in the state. And, this area of Texas didn't actually go through desegregation until 1982, which is crazy. Right. But we explore that in our show. I wanted to explore something else, though, a parallel that we kind of have here as actors sitting across the table from you. I don't know, again, like what it is to put yourself into a year of a place you've never been to do this level of research. We try with every role we take on. I spent a lot of time in blood and sweat and tears trying to figure out how to honor everyone that had an injury similar to my characters on the show. But one parallel that we have is very often as an actor, you can be scared that one role will define you in everybody else's eyes for the rest of time, and they'll never see you as anything else. And some people don't work after that happens again. I was interested to know if, you said off mic to us before we started today, I hope this is the last time I ever talk about Friday Night Lights. Did you ever come to a point where you were like thinking, is this thing going to define me? Like, what is that?
Well, it does define me. I would like to point out that I have done a recent book called The Mosquito Bowl, and that took me 5 years. It's about a group of Marines who were great college players. The two regiments ended up playing against each other in this funky, epic, serendipitous football game called the Mosquito Bowl on the island of Guadalcanal, Christmas Eve of 1944. They're Marines. They beat the shit out of each other. They had a ball, 1,500. It was a way to boost morale because they knew what was coming. The next big one, which was Okinawa, which would put us within spitting distance of the Japanese homelands. And 3 months later, they were on their way to Okinawa. And of the 65 who played, ranging in age from 18 to 24 kids, basically, of that 65, 15 died. And so the book is about several of the players and taking them through their lives up until that brutal, horrific battle. So, look, I've tried to fight against it. I've done other books that I like. I am particularly proud of the Mosquito Bowl, where the stakes were even higher than, we're talking about life and death. Football is important, but it's not life and death. But I'm defined by it. I still get emails about it. You asked me to be on this podcast. Folks, it's 33 years old, okay? It's 33 years old. And I just can't keep talking about it because it fucks up my head. And, when I get really depressed, I imagine what my obit's going to be. And I know it's going to be Buzz Bissinger, the author of the iconic book, Friday Night Lights, blah, blah, blah. And as my father says, it's a good problem to have. But I sometimes feel like the literary equivalent of the high school quarterback. My time in the sun was writing this book. It was my first book. I was 33. In a sense, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. It took off. Sold about 2 million copies. It still sells today. Now it becomes a film. Now it's a TV show. I'm just waiting for the musical. I don't, whether they can pull that off, I don't know.
It's interesting to me.
It has a life completely of its own, and I'm just part of the industry that's known as Friday Night Lights.
My favorite musical of all time is called The Last 5 Years, and it's really about a writer who sells a book at the age of 24, and really? He has just gotten married, and then the deterioration of his marriage as his career starts to rise. But the musical thing of it, I was approached to play Coach Taylor in kind of like this musical parody, like kind of thing of which I've done some of them out here before. I did I Know What You Did Last Summer, and they've done the OC, and they've done these, where they have some actors from the show that come out and in promoting this idea, I did a short video where I lipped the words "Clear Eyes, Full Hearts Can't Lose" to Kyle's voice just to get people excited about we're going to do this one day only and a theater, 5,000 seats or whatever, just kind of script reading and with musical stuff put into it. And I immediately got a call from Kyle. And he was like, he did not understand what was going on. And he was like, why is my voice on your face? Please don't ever use my voice on your face again. I was mortified. Really? I was like, holy shit.
Is that right?
I don't think a musical would ever quite work. But
you never know. They make musicals.
Well, I got to say, I'm usually the cynic in this group.
Yeah.
And I have come around to with being associated with Friday Night Lights or a part or whatever. And I wonder if even as an author, don't we all want to have at least that one thing that...
Of course. I mean, I would bitch and moan. My father would get angry. He said, Buzz, this is a great problem to have. I know a little bit about the book business. I can tell you 99% of authors don't have that problem. Their books are great, and they don't sell. You hit it out of the box, it's selling. And if that's what you're known for, it's better to be known for something in life. And my career did not end. I've written 5 other books. I've done other things. I worked for NYPD Blue for a year, so I got a taste of Hollywood. It was, without a doubt, the worst year of my life.
Ooh.
Awful.
You hated it, huh?
Hated it. The show was 7 years in. David Milch, you're not going to top David Milch, was absolutely brilliant, but he had just left, and they were just trying to squeeze some years to make more money. I mean, we kept giving Sipowicz new wives without any explanation of why he had new wives. I think we gave him new kids. I was in my 40s. It was just really hard for me because you got to suck it up. You got to swallow ego. And I think a lot of the writers there, without Milch, did everything. So the writers felt liberated, and it was just you get rewritten all the time. And I couldn't cope with it and left after a year and went back to what I'm good at, which is writing nonfiction.
Yeah, and I don't think this. I mean, I think this is a crowning achievement for you. I don't get the sense that it defines you. I mean, anybody who can go on and write a book with LeBron James and Caitlyn Jenner, your career continues. And luckily for a lot of us on Friday Night Lights, we didn't stop working after the show.
It sounds like everyone's done great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing, actually.
We were never such a massive hit that any of us ever were pegged by that large of an audience as you are only that character and that character only, and you cannot do anything else. We were – a lot of times we get asked this question, like, when did you know the show was a hit? Well, the show –
That's a good question. When did you know?
It never was. It never was.
Did you know more after – because it became a cult. I mean, it became – and it was like after the last episode, people would see, I don't know what's streaming, and go nuts. And go nuts. I mean, the comments that I've heard about the show –
yeah.
And I say, well, folks, I wrote the fucking book. Will you give me some fucking credit?
Yeah.
But it's a cult.
Well,
it's a huge cult hit. But I always felt it wasn't really, as you said, you were canceled twice. NBC, in its wisdom, put a show called Friday Night Lights on Tuesdays, which made no sense to anybody, including me, and then finally switched it. But after it was over, it's like people discovered it.
Yeah, streaming really saved us. I think, again...
You got any residual for that?
I mean, sure. But... less and less every year, which is fine. But I think again, it's people find this show and glom onto it because of the everlasting themes that are. I mean, they're all still present in today's society. But did you know it was a hit right away? That this book was going to change your life overnight?
I felt I had pulled it off in the sense that I'd pretty much done the best I could. I thought it was a very rare story because being in Odessa for me, a city kid. Was like being in a third world country, and I'm not trying to be dismissive. Although Odessa had aspects of being a third world country, it was not the most enlightened place in the world. And as a journalist, that's great. I don't like doing things I've done before. Right. So everything was stimulating. Every little thing was stimulating. Going to the games was stimulating. Going to the grocery store was stimulating. Picking up my kids when they're wearing red cowboy boots was stimulating, and it was really, really, exciting. We had no idea how well it would do. The feeling of the publisher was, all right, it comes out in 1990. It'll do well in Texas. They do research. Texans like Texas books. Maybe we'll have a southern swing, maybe into Oklahoma. We had no idea. And I've thought about it a lot. What we didn't anticipate was how many people from all over the country identified with the book and identified with the characters. And how many people have come up to me, whether it's New York or whether it's Ohio or Wyoming. I knew those. I knew kids like that. I knew a Mike Winchell, who you played. I knew a Boobie Miles. I knew a Don Billingsley. This reminds me of my high school years. We may not have had 20,000, but football was the lifeblood of our lives in high school. And I think that's why it took off. And also, let's face it was brilliantly written and brilliantly conceived, and I did a really great job.
You did.
But that was, it takes luck. Look, the other thing that happened, I might as well tell you, and I don't know if there are authors listening, I highly recommend this. I basically got death threats. Death threats are really good for an author, so I really recommend it. I was supposed to go down to Odessa for a series of book signings, and people called the bookstore and said, if he comes here, we're going to beat the crap out of him. And, I know Odessans, and they can get hot, and they can get angry, so we had to cancel the signings. And then it was picked up by the New York Times. My agent called the guy at the New York Times, and he wrote about it. I was called the Salman Rushdie of the United States, which was great. And then it really began to pick up steam and pick up steam and pick up steam. It sold consistently, and then when the film finally came out, that was a huge. But look, it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. It was great for my kids. I went with my fiance. We got married in the middle of the year, and we got divorced, which was good. It wasn't a good marriage, but as my shrink says, well, you got Friday Night Lights out of it, so what do you care?
There you go. Do you think Odessa or Permian is as you left it, or do you think has it cooled down? Has that sentiment against you cooled? Has it changed at all?
Yeah, because I think when the film came out, a lot of it was shot in Odessa, and they had to get permission. And I think Odessa began to realize, this is our calling card. This is cool. A movie being shot, a movie about Odessa, and they said the one thing is you cannot delve deep into race. We do not want to be portrayed wholesale as racist. And once they said, all right, we won't do that, they liked the film, and the film kind of, trumped the book. It was actually disappointing. I go down, I've been down several times since the book, and no one cares about me anymore. It's like, hey, beat me up.
You should bring
do
Pete
something.
with you.
Yeah, do something. What the hell? What happened?
Write another threat. Write another threat, please.
Come on, guys. And I have Brian Chavez is a really good friend. His family are really good friends.
He was the tight end. He was
a tight end who went to Harvard.
Went to Harvard, right?
Yeah. Gary Gaines did some weird things. They had no interest, none, in having these kids play in college. None. What? A lot of coaches do. I don't know what was your experience. A lot of coaches will send out their tapes of kids, talk to college kids. None. They even kept their letters during the season.
That's crazy.
Because they did not want them to get a big head. So Chavez was strong. He was a little undersized. So when he applied to Harvard, he said, Coach, can you send a tape of the games I'm in? And Harvard calls and says, we're confused. We can't find you. And Gaines and said tapes of games where he had never played. Which,
whoa.
Now,
Wow.
Gary's not at all a malicious person. It probably was a mistake, but that's a bad mistake. Now, he got in, and bless his heart, he graduated. I went to the graduation. He went back to Odessa and became a successful lawyer. Mm-hmm. And he's a great guy. His father is one of the greatest people I've ever met. Same with his mother. So we stay in touch. And I stayed in touch with Boobie for, 30 years. I did try to help him. He just couldn't make it on the outside. He just could not hold the job. He's got a beautiful temperament, and then something snaps.
Right.
And there was a very bad domestic assault incident. Everyone has two sides, but I do know for a fact that last week the prosecutors offered him 40 years. He's facing 6 felonies, and he's been arrested and in prison before.
But it also makes you go back to just when he was in high school and if people had cared about him.
Correct.
As opposed to just throwing him away when he was of no use to them.
And people did, as I said, cared about him in a weird way. He was kind of a star, but he got nothing out of it. I mean, how would you feel as a rap song made after you, Boobie Miles, and you don't even contact him?
Yeah.
You don't even think about giving him a dime, giving him anything. He's obviously a poor kid who's trying to who's struggling, but this last incident was really, really, really bad.
Yeah. A lot of those kids in the book, they didn't go on to play college ball, and I wonder if
that was true of a lot of the kids at Permian.
Because Permian was it was seen as this David versus Goliath, but they're doing it every single year, going up against the heavyweights and the most state championships in the state. But they are this small, forgotten place, and they make you remember them for 3 months a year.
But they're rock stars, too. I mean, everyone knows them in school. Little kids want their chin straps. They're rock stars. Yeah. It's really heady.
But then once they get out of that environment.
So if you're going to a small D3 school or junior college, you know what they do? They throw equipment in the middle of the field and say, take whatever you want. Yeah. Shoes don't fit. We don't care. Permian, you got anything you wanted. Now, there was one kid I wrote about, Ivory Christian from the 88 team, who started at linebacker for TCU. He was a tough kid, but he quit. He quit after the first year. I'm not sure why. Yeah. But he's almost the most stable of all of them. He's got a great wife. He's got kids. He drives a truck. He's done great. Some of them, it's been wobbly. The Mike Winchell character still takes care of his mother.
Well, in Odessa, I mean, at Permian, the legacy of those players that you wrote about will live forever. The legacy of the book will live forever. We'll make sure that everybody knows that is the impetus for everything is you and your exploration of all of this.
That's nice of you. As Brian Chavez says, we got 15 minutes that has somehow lasted a lifetime.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I think, my favorite book of yours, Father's Day. We explore the idea of fathers that are absent in Friday Night Lights, the TV show, but for a story of a father who is finding himself and the relationship with his son. I urge everyone to read Father's Day. It's, I think, outside of Friday Night Lights, my favorite piece that you've ever done. Very personal to you, but again, it's this incredible journey. I liken it to your way with words and exploration of relationships is wonderful. The Road by Cormac McCarthy or Census by Jesse Ball. I've read these books as well, which are father-son stories kind of in that way. Yours is much more heartening, of course.
Well, I appreciate it. My son was a twin and was born 1 pound 11 ounces and sadly had some very trace brain damage. And it's weird when you have a twin, one of whom has obviously disabilities, and the other of whom only weighing 1 pound 14 makes it through unscathed. And you're always balancing that. And look, I'm a father. I don't know if you guys are fathers. Mm-hmm. You know, you have dreams for your kids. Mm-hmm. And I've had to change those dreams. But he's fabulous. He's friendly, interesting vocabulary, is becoming more and more independent. And he's funny as hell. And Pete Berg has basically adopted him as almost his surrogate son. I mean, you know, what'd you do for Thanksgiving? You spent it with a family, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, his name is Zach. Zach went to Cabo with Pete. I was jealous, but they have a beautiful relationship. And you know, I've seen Pete on the set. And look, you got to be somewhat of a dictator as a director. There's a lot going on, but he's got a beautiful heart. He may not want people to know that, but he does.
I think that you put it perfectly right there.
Yep, 100%.
He is much softer than I think some people might think.
He is.
And he's a great, great guy. I mean,
he's and he's, when he cares, he's an amazing director. He's talking about adapting my last book, The Mosquito Bowl.
I would love to see that happen.
And you should read that. I mean, if he's into it, and I think it would be a film. I don't think it would be a miniseries, which I actually think is smart. He would be great.
Yeah.
Because it's also really violent, and Pete really likes blowing things up.
Before we let you go, because we know you got to get out of here, there's one question we always pose during the show. I'll let Zach do it, and this can be your final word ever on Friday Night Lights, I suppose.
It won't be. I'm a sucker. As my wife says, you always say no, and then you end up saying yes. So choose one or the other. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this Hamlet bullshit. One or the other.
Hamlet bullshit. So the podcast is called It's Not Only Football, Friday Night Lights and Beyond. And so we kind of, with each episode, we're like, well, if it's not football, what is it? And for you, be it that experience writing that book or the community, whatever it is, that's not only football, like, what is it to you?
Well, to me, it was never about football. I mean, football, in a sense, is the glue that holds it together. But I didn't really care about the games unless they're dramatic, unless they add to the drama, unless they're close. Because you want to root for the team. You want to see if they make it. But to me, it was about America. It was about small towns that are almost really never written about in any serious way, and what they believe in. We all have to have belief. We all have to have hopes. But, you know, in these isolated towns, you see them from the air, these little tiny dots of lights, and that's what I wanted to capture. And in this case, and I think in many cases, it is high school football, and it makes sense. You know, the hopes and dreams of families riding on the shoulders of kids. It's very epic. It's very moving. But the problem is the fans go on. There's always the next season. But for a lot of these kids, there's not. And this Pete did this in the film. There's a moment where they have this magnetic board where you list first string, second string. And I remember they lose to Dallas Carter, they're out, and immediately they go back to the coach's office and they take the names off and they throw them in a pile. And that was a perfect metaphor for what happens. You're a senior, you're done, you're in a pile.
I truly believe that we are so fortunate to have you here today, to
Thank
have
you so much.
this book, which explores so much of what we were able to cover today.
Yeah, it was really fun. You guys are good.
Oh,
I'll be on again with you, but no, I'm just saying this publicly. No one else, just the two of you.
That's awesome. We'll take it.
I just want to parenthetically say the reason the TV show, I think was great was you were exploring the same things. This was not a film about football and winning and are you going to be – you explored serious dynamics of relationships in a small town. And I think what I saw really did it brilliantly. And the proof is you've gone on, and look at the other actors who have gone on. You know, Michael Jordan, Riggins, Taylor Kitsch. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And Jesse Plemons is like the biggest of all.
Oh, my God.
Which I didn't see coming, but he's great because he's really spooky.
I could have told you on the pilot, this kid's a star.
Special. He was really he's a very interesting actor. So, you know, that part I love. I love that people went on. And then one other thing is, when I went to the set that one time, all the actors said, we could not have done this without you. And that did make me feel really good.
Thank you so much for being here today with us today. For everybody out there listening, thank you for listening as well. We will be back next week with another episode recap, jumping into our other form of the podcast. For Buzz Bissinger, for Zach Gilford, I'm Scott Porter. We say thank you. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, man. Thanks.
Yeah. That was fun.